All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It is February 21st. So live here, 10 a.m. out on the Pacific Coast or the West Coast. And thank you to those of you joining us live and then everyone listening recorded. Sarah, my girl Sarah's here with me today. So this is episode 3 of the Purpose and Passion Project. I'm finally getting it. That's quite a tongue twister, where I just sit down and chat with, so far we've gone with Lauren and Lindsay, 2 VFit trainers. And today we're going to go over to our first member interview. And Sarah is a girl so near and dear to all of our hearts. She's really jumped all into the community part of VFit, but her story is incredible. Full of, I was trying to think of a theme, and the word that kept coming up to me is just triumph. Like there's no other option. It's that all-in mentality of like burning the boats. My husband and I talk about that, like there is only one option, and that is to triumph through adversity. And you'll hear a bunch of different ebbs and flows. So first, good morning, Sarah. Where are you coming in from?
Good morning. Yes, I am here in San Jose, California.
So just over the mountains in the Bay Area. Is it raining there yet? No?
No, today it's sunny. It's supposed to start raining tomorrow. So
okay. Yeah, we have more storms coming on. And I know we were just reminiscing how you came to VFit. And then I remembered, I was at one of my high school friends, Julie, what a small world. It's such a health coach. She was your health coach to begin with?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And she brought you to VFit. So, and then I was do you remember when you came on the team?
No.
Lauren, look that. It was at least 3. I want to say 3. I can look up the exact dates. It has been a ride, a consistent, long, good.
Been like, I can't remember. I think it's been 2 years.
So much fun when we're having, I know I was just actually up right before we logged in, but I wanted, Sarah has such an incredible journey, and I've really gotten to know her over the last several years. That's why it feels like I've known you forever. Yeah. That's why I always am like, I feel like it's been a long time, but Sarah is one of those, you've inspired me so much with your authenticity and your vulnerability. And as we go through your journey, anything but easy has been like literally your life since you were in your mom's belly. So I love the opportunity to share these stories. I think all of our stories, even though they're different, inspire each other, and we're able to connect. There's lessons we can get out of everything. So Sarah and I kind of chatted behind the scenes with a little rough plan of what we wanted to go over, but as always, like we're real and we just go with the flow. So if anyone has questions too, we'll have some time at the end. But you had told me the story when your mom was pregnant and I found this like fascinating because like I said, before you were even born, triumph was your word. So do you want to share a little bit of that?
Yeah. It's so true. And it's, I have to remind myself sometimes, like, I'm here for a reason. I'm here on purpose. So when my mom was pregnant with me, she had an IUD. And at the time, so this is early 80s, 81. At the time, it was very dangerous. And in fact, her and my dad sought out a dozen or so medical providers, some experts in the field, and they all basically said, either the baby's going to be stillborn, or mom's going to die during childbirth, or like it was like not good outcome. And so, of course, their recommendation was to abort the pregnancy. And my parents decided to not listen to any of them and go ahead and proceed with the pregnancy. And I was born 9 months later, and I was not stillborn, obviously. My mom was totally fine. And so I just, my mom always tells the story. It's like, there's a reason I'm here. There's a reason that I'm here. And, it's just, and kind of that like defying the odds. It's, that's been one of the themes in my life. And I also was born with flat feet, and the pediatrician was like, she might not ever walk normal. here I am, six
So
and a half months.
the
learning to
way to
run.
the way to get you going is tell you what you can't do.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I love that, because that's our mantra for the year: live on purpose. And you just recently shared that particular story with me this year, I believe. And I was just like, I mean, those are the things, like, that's such a good lesson for everyone. There's something, in our upbringing, or, where we were challenged at an early age, or maybe it was, before we were even born, and just giving you that tenacity that you have and part of your character, and knowing there is nothing. I believe that, I've got a strong faith, and I know you do too. Like, there's a reason. So your mom had a good fighting will too, not to listen to just anybody, right? They kept seeking out the right help, and obviously you're here. And your story continues. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Do you have brothers and sisters? And then you had a pretty massive tragedy when you were young.
Yeah. So I have, my brother is 4 years older than me, and then my sister is 2 years older than that. So I'm the baby. And yeah, I grew up in a real small town in Oregon, Silverton, Oregon, the gateway to Silver Falls State Park. So if you're ever in Oregon, check it out, because it's an amazing park. But yeah, so we were living there, and my dad owned his own small business, fixing copy machines. He had previously worked for Xerox in the Bay Area, but they moved to Oregon. He started his own business. He was doing really, really well. He would travel, far, Portland every day, so like an hour and a half each way. My mom helped him with his business, as well as, being home. There was always like homemade bread and homemade cookies in the cookie jar. And, she was like the room mom, and a good life. And then he was coming home one evening. He had worked late to help a friend out. And on the rural roads in Oregon, he was hit head on by a drunk driver. And I was home. I actually answered the phone from the Silverton Hospital, and they're like, "Is Mary there?" "This is the Silverton Hospital. Is Mary there?" And I'm like, I was six. And my brother and sister, I think, were both at friends' houses. And I don't know what they said to my mom, but she was just like stark white, threw me in the car, went to the hospital. And it was he did survive, but not without a lot. Almost every bone in his body was broken. They didn't think he'd ever walk again. They couldn't even use the bones. They were just basically shreds. And so lots of surgeries, lots of time, months and months and months he was in the hospital. But I think, through that, and then my mom, all of a sudden, here she is, husband's in the hospital, these 3 kids, my dad was the only income coming in. And so I'm sure it was hard. I think my mom did a great job shielding us of a lot of that, especially me being the youngest. But I think through that, one, I saw the power of community, because our hometown, just rallied behind our family. And, we had so much support, and then even once my dad came home, it was a good 2 years of physical therapy and rehab. He was able to walk again, and so I think, I learned from him so early on in life, he never complained. We know, he was in pain every day. He was then permanently disabled, couldn't ever go back to work. And so my mom got a office job. And so I had my parents had role reversal. My dad did a lot of the cooking and cleaning and took us to all our sporting events and things. And, but, and that's the thing, my dad just always, he always just instilled in us, that I think this is the one thing he told me that has always stuck with me is he said, you never know, you can't choose the cards that you're dealt in life, but you can choose how you play the cards you have.
Ooh, that's so good.
And, it was always, it was giving up's not an option. Giving up's not an option. He just drilled that into all of us. And, and so even in, as I've dealt with hard things and medical things and just, life, I always go back to that. It's like, Sarah, like giving up's not an option. Like what would my dad say?
One thing you also that I caught on in that, and you will bring up more as we go on, the power of community, but this was back in the probably late 80s, right? When that happened, because I think we're about the same age. You said that your mom, like your community rallied, which is one thing, but you also have to accept help. And I think that's a lot of times when people are hit with tragedy or something hard, they kind of want to like, they don't let people in to help. And then, so I think that part of your mom has also trickled into you, because that's something you're so good about, both being a leader, but also like accepting help as well. So, wow. Yeah, that was a story that I just recently learned. And yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot, and I really do believe like God's intricacies are really, or, whatever you call, like magical, like nothing is, you never know where that story weaves and what it's poured into you. So as you grew up, you started to face some health. I guess we can go between, because I feel like it's a double. So the next part of the story that I want to hit upon is like your own health challenges and what you went through the last couple of years, but also in that you became a health coach and turned your health around under your control when so much was happening out of your control. So I don't know the exact timeline of that. When you had bile duct cancer, correct?
Yeah. So I can give, I'll try to give a little synopsis, because there's a lot there. And so actually, I mean, and I think a lot of people might not know this about me. I started having health conditions at the age of 9. And so pretty much most my life, I have identified with someone being sick, someone having something rare, right? Like at 9 years old, it started out as a flu, maybe food poisoning, we're not really sure. And then it was like, but I just didn't get better. And, after a month, my parents were just like, we're not taking the flu as an answer. And so after tests, it was like, oh my gosh, her thyroid's going crazy, which is super rare for a child. And so luckily we were able to get into Dornbecker's Children's Hospital in Portland. And again, my parents, that like can-do attitude, like it's an hour and a half each way, but it was like, there was never a question. Like, of course, we're going to take her to see these experts, and so it just took a lot. And so they finally got my thyroid under control, but I had to take medication, and that was just always really kind of fragile medically. Like I would just get sick a lot. And if I like went to a sleepover with friends and stayed up too late, it was like guarantee the next week I have a nasty cold. Like, and so I just never really knew what was normal. And, but I dealt with it. Like I didn't let it stop me or really identify me. It was just like, it's just part of what I have to do. And then went to college, and my junior year of college, I started having more health conditions. I was super, super sick. In and out of the hospital all the time. Like they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they started doing some different like exploratory procedures. Let's do a colonoscopy. Let's do an endoscopy. Like we just, trying to figure out. And then that's when they discovered I had celiac disease. And so getting on gluten-free diet, helped a lot of my conditions. I also was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in that time as well. And so, those are both like lifelong, you got to manage these things. And I did. And, and luckily I only went to college like an hour from my parents. And so they were always there. They were there every appointment. Like, I remember like I was terrified to inject myself with insulin. So my mom was like, well, give me the syringes. I mean, obviously she didn't take insulin. She just took saline, but she was like, I'll do it, and she tells me today, she was like, I was so terrified, but she was like, but I wanted to show you like we don't have another option. Like you need this insulin to save your life. And so, and so that and then things got kind of quiet for a while. Moved to California, started teaching, started my family. And then 2017, the train wreck came, and I found myself being rushed to the ER on January 5th. And I was in sepsis. I didn't even know it at the time. Obviously, I was so sick, but I was going into multiple organ failure. I had a blood infection in my entire body. And so they got that cleared up. And then 2 weeks later, I was back in the ER with another 105 temperature and another infection. So after digging, that's when they said, okay, something's wrong with your liver. You have this rare condition, again, like rare, like I get all the rare things. And unfortunately, there's no medicine, there's no treatment. Sometimes people, they'll need a liver transplant like right away. Sometimes they can live 30 years and not need a transplant. It's so rare, we don't really know. So we're just gonna hope for the best. And that year I was in and out of the hospital every 4 to 6 weeks. I spent more time in the hospital than I did at home. And
how old were your kids at this point?
So they were like 3 and 6.
Wow. So now almost, wow.
And then the other thing they said, oh, and by the way, with this liver disease, every time you get an infection in the bile ducts, it increases your chance of getting bile duct cancer. And so they screen you constantly. So they're constantly going in and doing a procedure called an ERCP. They can take some brushings. And at first everything was normal, fine. And then February of 2018, so a year later, they said, oh, it came back atypical. It wasn't like slam dunk positive for cancer, but enough suspicion that they were like, we need to further investigate this. And they were like, we want to send you to the Mayo Clinic because they're like the best at this, like they specialize in this. And so they sent me to Mayo in Rochester, Minnesota. And I spent initially like 6 weeks there, all this testing. And it was at that point they said, well, it's like precancerous. Like basically it's like there's some abnormal cells, but there's no tumors yet, but like there's the possibility, like it's there, it could start growing at any time. Right now, we're not going to treat you, but we're going to they called it high surveillance or something like that. And they said, every 3 months, we want you back every 3 months. And, because if we catch this, they said, we can treat it. But then this is the other kicker though. They said, however, if and when this becomes cancer, we have this specific protocol, we do radiation, chemo, and then we do a full liver transplant. And they said, but right now, unfortunately, you are too obese and you wouldn't qualify for a transplant. And that was a very pivotal, like, oh no, like I knew my health and my weight was not ideal. But I didn't realize that, for certain medical procedures, like they have parameters. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, luckily I don't need to have this right now because I would be denied, but I'm like, I need to do something like, and I was like, and you know what, I would ask the doctors, what can I do? Suggestions. Not one single doctor ever asked me like, what do you eat? How do you sleep?
Are you
exercise? Like they were just like, we don't have a pill for you, so we can't help you. And so I think that's when I finally had to go, okay, you know what? Like enough pity party, Sarah, like enough. Like I was really in this victim mindset. Like I didn't do anything to cause this. I didn't cause my diabetes. I didn't it's just, woe is me. And it's just my life. And I think I finally had to be like, well, you know what? I didn't cause this. It's not my fault, but what can I do? Because no one else is going to do it except for me. And that's what I started. I got a health coach. I started working on my own health. Yes, I dropped a lot of weight, but I think more importantly, it was my mind that got healthy. I think I had so much just negative mindset and these limiting beliefs. And I
mean, you've gone through a lot in life already. I mean, being in the hospital and in the medical system, like you are kind of I always say, I mean, we haven't thankfully had a lot, but just when my kid, like it's a Twilight Zone type situation. So it is like an alter reality, but there's a big point here. And, you know, there's going to be people listening to this that need to hear. And I mean, this is like, you got me choked up because this is like my mission in life. And yes, for you, it took till it almost was too late, but thank God it didn't. But your health is something you have so much control over. And so many people, it takes getting to a pivotal point, like literally life or death, about, not knowing like that surgery, they're not going to do that surgery. I've heard that from other people too. So, I mean, your story then continues more, but I think, if you're at a point where you need to make some health changes, somebody listening to this, like, let Sarah be such a guiding light of like, nobody's going to do it for you. Like, if I could stand that is my mountain to stand on. Nobody is going to do it for you. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's, and it's hard, and it's, and I mean, we know there's so much connection with the physical health and the mental health, and, and it's really, it's still this taboo thing in our society, and judgment, and, I mean, I've had so many amazing conversations with people that it's just like, man, women in their 40s and 50s, that it's like, some of the reasons why they are in the place they are, I mean, it roots back to childhood, and I mean, and even like generations of just habits and all kinds of stuff. So it,
well, and I guess another good point too, like, if I always say, if it's going to be, it's up to me, but it's never too late. Like, you could have said, okay, whatever, it's, I'm not going to do anything about it. And these are the cards I was given. So yes, so now we're at like 2019, and they're like, telling you can't, when this happens, you're not going to be able to get the surgery you need.
Yeah. So I just really I just took it upon myself, and I just started baby steps, and it was like, okay. I mean, when I first started working on my health, like, I couldn't even walk up the stairs in our home without getting out of breath, and so I think it really helped me I started just super small changes, getting support. I mean, I think, working with a health coach, having a community, seeking out, mental health support, seeing a counselor. I mean, just all the things, it's kind of like I always say, like, you go to the physical gym every day, you also need to go to that mental gym, and now it's like, it's part of my core routine. It's like, I have these I am statements on my mirror, and I say them out loud, and I don't care who thinks I'm silly, but
I'm looking at your wall. What does your sign say? Right. No, in your wall. Keep life simple. Well, you can just tell it's full of inspiration. Yeah. And I think that's probably why you're such a great coach to others now too, is you have that empathy, and you've walked the walk, and so it looks like you came to VFit around, well, you're almost at your 2-year anniversary, March 15th.
Yeah.
And so when you started, that was March 15th, 2021. And you were ready to you'd gotten your weight. So, where were you at your health? Where were you? What made you
exactly.
Yeah.
So I had, I had lost, about 60 pounds of weight, really had dialed in, my nutrition, my water, my mindset. And then it was I truly believe, in everyone's health journey, you're never done, right? Like, you never arrive. It's always like, okay, what's next? And so at that point, it was like, okay, I really want to start incorporating, beyond just walking, but like purposeful exercise. But I was really, really scared, because I associated exercise and working out with, oh my gosh, I have to lift all these weights, and then I'm going to be in pain. And I'd had so much physical pain from, all these infections. I mean, I was living with chronic pain. And so there was a lot of mindset work that had to be done around start small, and no, you don't have to go kill it in the gym and lift so much weight that you can't move for 3 days. That's not, that's not the purpose of functional fitness. It's just moving your body, even if it's starting with 5 minutes, and so, my coach introduced me to VFit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. I'd never liked group fitness in the past. And, but I just thought, but you know what, also I'm not where I want to be. And so I got to do something different. It's like, I think when we often, it's the same thing with like trying to dial in nutrition, right? It's like people try the same thing over and over and over, and they expect something different. And it's like, well, you have to change something you're doing or an approach. And I think for me, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. I love it. Like, the first thing I noticed about our community was just people are not judgmental. Like, you just come as you are. And, even if it's just walking around your room, while everyone else is doing something different, even if everyone else on the screen is using weights, but you're not ready for that yet, like, that's okay. Like, you do what you can do and you build on that. It's also been fun because like, it's kind of helped me try new things. Like, I never, ever, ever thought I would take a dance class. I was like, that is not me. And I love it. It's so fun.
I so relate to that.
Yeah. And Zumba, I was like, I don't Zumba. That's not me. And, but it's like, you don't know until you try it.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, just intrigued. I'm sitting here like, who's interviewing Sarah? Like, I'm just want to listen to her. And I've always I've said that you have something away with your words. And it's the more I'm hearing your story, it's because of the depth of your life and what you've been through. I like want to be your agent and like go on a podcast tour and get the story out to, to everyone. But like that second part about, okay, so if you're going to make a change, you are the one that needs to make the change, but it doesn't have to be painful. And it can be what works for you. Like when you say people are so afraid of exercise, first, because they have a negative connotation with it, which is another mission of mine. Like, it can be fun. You do Zumba, like Zumba's exercise. But I think what happens too is people go all out to start and they are super sore and it's uncomfortable. And then they stop and then they start, like, they never get past that initial, like, letting your body kind of get into exercise. And I love that. You're like, if you're not ready for weights, don't do weights, like 5 minutes. And that really is our philosophy. And I said last week when I was last month when I was interviewing Lindsay, it's because the trainer team we've all come into fitness through a hardship or through not your typical, just like, I want to get in shape to look good, or the material reasons. Like, every trainer, fitness is part of their soul and their being and lifestyle. And so I think that I'm glad to hear you say that you felt that coming in, because we don't know when you first, like, I didn't know any of this back then. And then it didn't get easier. I mean, your life.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah. So after that, like, I was, doing VFit. I was still, just keeping consistent, with my healthy habits. I had started health coaching at that point. So I was helping other people. I was feeling good. Like, I was feeling in a good place. I was having, maybe once or twice a year, I'd get an infection in the bile duct, but I was not.
I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but I think this is important. Did you want to get into health coaching, or did someone see that light in you and encourage you to? I'm just curious.
That's a good question. So, when I started working on my own health, because I had been so sick, I had basically stopped teaching, which was my career, my love. I love teaching. And then actually my last year that I worked, I actually was outside the classroom, but I was working with new teachers. So kind of, because I wanted to make that bigger impact. When you're in the classroom, you have your students in front of you, which is amazing and wonderful, but it's like, how can I help more? Well, if I help teachers and then each one of them is going in and helping their kiddos, right? It's a bigger impact. But I was so sick. So I was just like, there's no way, being in and out of the hospital so much. And so once I started working on my health, it had just been a few months. And this is where my faith comes in, because I just feel like everything happens on purpose. And it had been just, I think a couple of months. So I was starting to feel good. I was starting to see that like light, like there is hope. And I was talking to one of my daughter's teachers, and she was asking me, like, do I think I'll go back to teaching? And, and just like where I was at. And I just was like, I don't know, like, now that I'm out of the classroom, I love it and I miss it. There's also a lot about teaching that I don't miss, and the stress. And I do like, my heart has always from a young age been like helping people and teaching people. And I said, and then with everything I've been through health-wise, like, I was like, I think if I ever did anything, it would be like teaching people, but around the realm of health, some way, shape, and form. And then as I continued working on my health, a few months later, my coach was just like, Sarah, like, your story itself, like your testimony, like, it's amazing, and you should help. There's so many people out there that can relate, and, they haven't, and that's the thing. I mean, when I first started, I made that decision to take ownership, I didn't really think anything was gonna change at first. I mean, I had been so lost. And so, all of my hope was gone. And I think, my coach was able to kind of say, okay, but I see it in you, we're going to do this, and every day that I worked on my health, and it was like, okay, that it's like all of a sudden the flicker of the flame started, and then it got bigger and it got bigger. And, and so then it's like, oh my gosh, wow, now I'm on this other side, and I see that, you don't have to be in pain all the time. I see that, change can happen. And, and I think that's a big part of my heart is just, I talk to people all the time, and they're just like, I feel awful, or, I can't move, the chronic pain, or I'm so depressed. And, and it's just like, I think showing them that, it can change. Like, your current reality is not your final destination. Like, it can improve.
Oh, and I was thinking as you're talking and telling that part of the story, how you shifted careers, but your heart had always been to serve. And I know for me, getting into fitness, I would have never thought health and fitness, but it's that same thing of like, where is your heart? And there's different ways to reach people. And it really does take someone helping to see that light and push you, because I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but like, I still get in my own head, and I still get imposter syndrome, and I'm still like, but I'm still working on myself so much. Who am I to coach? And who am I? And so even as coaches, like, you have to have your coaches and your people. And my coach always reminds me, that's why you're a good coach, is you're still working on yourself constantly. You still have coaches, like you said earlier. You don't just say, oh, I'm so healthy, I'm as shape as I could get, I'm at my weight, all these things, and then you just stop. Like, it is a constant work in progress. So, okay, here you are. We're kind of getting towards the end of the story, but or towards the present. Here you are, doing pretty good. Like, you're on a healthy track, you're coaching, you found some new purpose. And then I was just like, this is good. I've overcome all these obstacles. And then but I still have this liver disease. It's quieter, but it's still there. And so they're still screening me, remember, because I'd had that multiple visits to Mayo. And, but like, as the time had gone on, like, cause they said, basically, once you have these atypical results, you have these cells that have mutated. They said, usually if it's going to turn into cancer, we'll see it within 5 years. So that was their plan, was like, we're going to monitor you for 5 years. And after 5 years, if there's no cancer, then we'll just go back to the yearly maintenance. And so I was like 3 years in, and everything had been fine. And then here I am feeling on top of the world. I'm doing great. I feel healthy. And I went in for the next, screening they have to do. So this was October 2021. And my doctor called me, and she was like, well, you'll never believe it. And I'm like, she's like, the brushings came back positive. And I was just like, she's like, you have bile duct cancer. Like, this is for sure. And I was just like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, now what? And she was like, well, you're going back to Mayo. And this time we chose to go to Mayo in Arizona. Did it at the last minute? Because so at this point, you're pretty plugged into VFit. You had done group challenges. So you had like a good community. But I remember like you got switched there at the last minute or something. And we said that was a stroke of, again, God, because it was going to be freezing and, Yes. Yeah. So initially, you're right. We wanted to go back to Minnesota just because we like knew the campus, and, I knew the doctors there.
But we were just having major scheduling issues. And I'm like, I was just really on pins and needles because I was like, I got cancer in me. Like, we don't want to delay treatment, and it just wasn't between Kaiser and Mayo. Like, I don't know what was going on. And I just finally got so frustrated. I was like, what are my other options? And that's when my main doctor at Kaiser was like, well, she's like, you can go to Arizona. She's like, I know they're much better with scheduling and they're on top of it. And so I was like, okay, done.
So a little background. Well, so now at this point, your kids, this was not even 2 years ago. Were you just going, you didn't know you were gonna have to live there yet, or where were you
right.
just,
So
okay.
Initially they have you come out and you have like about a week and a half of appointments and tests. And because basically, like in my case, they're determining two things. They're determining, one, is in fact the cancer there? I mean, yes, okay, we've had this cytology now, but like they want to see evidence of a mass. And so they did more, an MRI, CAT scan, another like an endopic ultrasound. And sure enough, they did. So it was like confirmed, yep, there's a mass there, 1.4 centimeters. Because that's the thing too, is that like they have such specific parameters. If it's over 3 centimeters, then they won't. Not that they don't treat it. I don't really know because I didn't go down that path, but I know it's not the same protocol. But mine was like, well, yeah, of course, obviously you want nothing there, but if it's going to be there, it meets the parameter. So one, okay, we're going to treat that, and then they're also evaluating, okay, because the part of the protocol is, then they list you for transplant. And so they want to make sure, your body can undergo a transplant, so they're testing, everything, right? Obviously you can't have any, heart issues. The whole shebang, like you have to be healthy enough. And so that initial visit was like, okay, seeing where we're at, what treatment they're going to do. And so that was like the end of November. And so, yeah, very beginning of December, they said, okay, like everything's good. We're going to list you for transplant. We're going to start the treatment. So they were like, you're going to go home for a few days and then you're going to come back. And they were like, basically like when you come back, like you're going to start radiation right away. It's going to be twice a day for like 4 to 5 weeks. And then you stay, because they're like, then you don't know when you'll get the call for transplant. And so they're like, basically you're going to come back out here and you could be here. We don't know how long, at least 3 months, 6 months, a year. Like you just don't know. And so, yeah, like that was crazy. Like, I don't even think at the time, I think I was just so like in the motions of like, of course, this is what we're doing. We're just doing this. We're packing up. Like, what are the things around that I use every day? Like, what do I want to take? And I don't think it really dawned on me. Like, that's something that most people never have to go through in their life, is like relocating for an undetermined amount of time.
For a life saving.
Like,
yeah. No, and
just go like having cancer and getting a transplant, like just that is a lot. Like,
right.
Let alone not being at home.
But yeah, and I guess that's where your lifetime of up to that point of training. So you ended up, the whole family, you all went out there, right?
Yeah, initially we all went out there. Because we arrived, it was like the 22nd of December. So we celebrated Christmas and we'd asked, like, can we wait and start the radiation till the new year? And they were like, no, like this is urgent. And so we all went out there, and then the kids stayed for the first like 4 weeks. And then, and that was hard. We had to really make a decision. Like, we don't know how long we're going to be here. What do we do for school? They both were in school and they both love their schools. My daughter actually had she had started at a new school that fall. And and so it was really hard to kind of figure out, like, do they stay out here and do we homeschool? Do we enroll them in school in Phoenix? Do we what do we do? Do we have them go back home and then have, family stay there? And, it's tough. I think, weighing all the pros and cons. And I think, for my kids, I think especially my daughter, like, I think it was more important that they were at home,
Normal.
going to school, with their friends. But then that meant, that I'm away from them. And
I was just going to say that's actually a selfless thing, because of course, as parents, we want them there. And I talked to you earlier about like that. I think we've all had it as parents, like that fear of like, oh my gosh, what if I'm not here for my kids or something happens to me? And like, I mean, we just think, mom brain is crazy. So I can't imagine like going through a truly like life, like, and you said that it was around that point that you had to change your mindset.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, it's, and that's one of the things I loved about Mayo was, I mean, they had so much support. I mean, I walk into the first, not like actual radiation, but just the appointment with the radiation doctor. And, and he said, okay, and you're going to have a consult with so-and-so too. And, I mean, they spend so much time. I mean, that first appointment, we were with the radiologist for like hour and a half. I mean, I'm like, this is so, it tells you how serious this all is, but like just that attention and it half of that was like the more medical side of it. And then half of it was the counseling and the like, this is a big deal. And the advice of like, Sarah, you're the patient, like you shouldn't be checking your portal and reading every single note from the doctors. Like a little bit of ignorant bliss is a good thing right now. Like your body's going through a lot. And, and then he's like, and we have a therapist. And like, I met with her and like, she's like, you don't have to work with me. Like, it's just a service we provide. And I'm like, absolutely. And so she was really, really phenomenal. But I had all this, just the constant, the fear, the what if, just, oh my gosh, we don't know, is this, because it's like, they have to treat the cancer. And if I don't make it through radiation, then I can't get the transplant. Yeah. And then, but then even after radiation, they have to go in and they do a staging surgery and they test a bunch of lymph nodes. And if it's spread, like, so it was just this like.
So did the chemo and the radiation have to work in order for you to be able to actually get on the transplant list?
Yeah. So I had to I had to successfully go through, I think like 26 radiation appointments. The chemo, fortunately, was not, it was a very mild chemo, actually it was just oral medication. And so I took that kind of in tandem with the radiation. But yeah, so I had to that was like phase one, was like getting through that. And like, it was I kind of went in ignorant, thinking I'm young, I'm healthy. It wipes you out. I mean, I just literally would wake up in the morning, go 7 a.m., my first session, come back, eat, sleep, wake up, eat, go back for my second appointment, go home, sleep. Like, I felt like I'm like, I have no purpose right now. Like but I'm like, no, my purpose is making it through this. I ended up having to be hospitalized halfway through radiation. And like, there was a point I was so miserable. I didn't want to keep going. And I remember one of the doctors on the liver team came in and I was just like, I'm in so much pain. And because I had like an infection going on, because of course, I mean, with the chemo, you have like no immune system. And I was just like, I don't want to go for the radiation. I don't want, and he was just like, he just looked at me and he's like, are you going to give up? Like, I mean, and it was just this moment, like, I didn't know if I could keep going. Like, it was so hard. But then I thought, oh my gosh, like, if I don't, I got to find somehow some inner extra strength, because I'm like, the alternative is I give up and then it's just a matter of probably months and I would succumb to the cancer. And so I was just like, no, like, I have to see my kids grow up. I have to, like, it's just, and I was like, he's like, what's it going to take? And I'm like, some more pain medication. Like, I'm in so much pain. And he was like, absolutely. Like, we'll drug you up until, you're comfortable enough. Like, and I think that's what's, the power too of like communicating what you need. And
yeah, no, now that you're retelling the story, I remember we had started connecting, you joined that group because you were still coming to meetings, like physically you couldn't obviously exercise, you're tired, all that stuff, but you had built this arsenal of like mental health stuff, which is, I believe, the true armor. But I remember you would say, send me quotes, send me messages. Like you asked, like, leave me a voice message. I'm getting lonely. I'm getting scared. Like you were not afraid to like show that vulnerable side. And I remember you put together like a little quote book for yourself, and you had t-shirts made that people bought, and my daughter has one. So I just remember being like, you taught me, and I can't imagine, I mean, there's probably so many people that like through, like you were sharing some really like hard moments that you were just like, this is the reality of it. So,
yeah. So I made it through. I mean, we finished the radiation, and then they did the staging surgery. So that was like the second phase. So that was always like, well, if it's spread, you know, if any of these lymph nodes come back, then you don't go on to transplant. And that all came back. I mean, I think the doctors like, so the surgeon that did my transplant was the same one that did the staging surgery. And I mean, they were just so elated. And like, he was just like, he called and he asked the path, because it can take anywhere from like a couple of days to a week for the pathology to come back. And he's like, I called them myself to see if they can, you know, the sooner the better we get results. And it was like, he's just like, yep, we're all clear, we're on to transplant. And so, you know, I think that's really when I was just like, okay, now I have to wait for a phone call. Like, we don't know, this is beginning of February. And I had a few days where I was just like, what if they never call me? What if the cancer comes back? Like, just all these things. And it's not by accident that a friend sent me a podcast. And in this podcast, the person, I mean, she talks about a lot of amazing things about overcoming fear and all these things. And she says, you know, we have to stop asking ourselves, what if, and thinking of the worst thing. She's like, what if we flip that and think, what if the best thing, what's the best thing that's going to happen? And it was just this moment where I just finally was like, what if, Sarah, what if you get this call and you get this new liver and it's perfect? And like, what's the best case scenario? Like, I'm going to have no complications. I'm going to live an amazing life, you know, because they kept telling me like, our job is to make sure you get a new liver and then you look back and this is a distant memory and you're going to live. I mean, they were like, you're going to live till your grandkids are bugging you. And they're like, you'll die someday, but it won't be because of your liver. Like, I mean, they were just like, you know, and I think, and that I took that and I owned it. I'm like, what's the best thing? Like, this is going to be amazing. And, you know, 5 weeks later, I got that call and I'm like in pre-op waiting to, and I'm like, everyone's just like, oh, how are you feeling? The chaplain comes in, this and that. And, you know, I was just so calm. And I just kept telling myself, like, this is going to be amazing. Like, this is all going to work. It's going to go super well. This liver is going to be perfect. And I truly believe like having that mindset made all the difference in the world. Like, if I would have gone in there being like, oh my gosh, I'm so worried and something's going to happen. And, you know, I'm going to have to be in the hospital a long time, or just, you know, I mean, I had an amazing surgery. I mean, the liver was perfect. I've had 0 complications. I mean, very minimal pain. Like, that was like one of my number one things was like the pain. Like, the pain was okay. I mean, it was, you know, obviously it's a major surgery, like you're in pain, but it dissipates pretty quickly. And I was up walking within 24 hours. I mean, only in the hospital, I think 4 days. Like, they actually discharged me, let me go back to California sooner than expected, because they were just like, you're doing amazing. And I was like, dang right.
Yes. I remember you sending us videos, pushing the little walker around, like, I'm up, I've got this. And so yeah, did you just have your 9 month? Wait, how long?
It will be a year, March 9th.
That's what I thought. Okay. So we're
3 weeks. Yeah.
And yeah, so now you're almost, we don't like to say the word boring, but you're
it's true though. It's taken an adjustment, you know, that like I mean, I was sick for so long, and then I was like really sick, and like I was the center of attention. and then it's, as things have normalized, it's like, oh, like my schedule doesn't revolve around appointments, and I'm not sick all the time, and I'm not seeing doctors, and people aren't calling and asking how I am. And yes, it's all a good thing, but it definitely takes work. And I think, and it was hard. And then like, who am I now? And
right.
I'm not sick Sarah anymore. And, income back to therapy I go. And
I think that is so important, because I think I've even just in, my mom going through cancer and just anything traumatic in our lives, we almost like wear our cape and it's almost, I don't want to say easier, because there's nothing about that was easy to go through at all, but you put on that like resilience and kind of just even adrenaline, whatever gets you through, just fear, grit, like I said, but then you have to come to the other side and deal with some like pretty big stuff. And I'm sure, your kids seem like they've been amazing. Did they get like, how are your kids, I guess would be my, like, do they worry about you? Or because I was just thinking back to like when you were a kid, you saw your dad for a long period having to fight for his life basically and health. And so, now the kids have seen that through you. Like, how are you more equipped to?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, they don't like talk about it a ton, which is fine, and I think, even when they were there and, and I was going through the radiation, we did make it a point. I think it was kind of fun. Like we had a little star chart for like each, it's like, okay, mom has, this many left until, we get to celebrate and that the cancer is gone. And, and I think, they have kind of, I think my daughter, is more of like the worry, like, cause that's like when we're talking about transplant and okay, they're going to give me a new liver. Like the very first question she asked was, so what happens if it doesn't work? I think she's kind of went there, whereas my son was like, oh, they do what? And, and he's still kind of like, the other day he asked me, he's like, you still have that scar? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be there forever, and, but I know, I know for my daughter, especially being older, like it's definitely like she understands it. And I think like she got to a point where she was really frustrated at school, right as I was finishing up, getting the transplant. And it was just hard for her, I think emotionally and, and she was just like, this isn't normal. Like most kids don't worry about, their parent being in and out of the hospital and being sick all the time. Like it's not a normal thing. And it's hard for people to relate. And, she had one teacher trying to tell her that, oh, I understand. And she's like, actually you don't, but, but I think now it's just like, it's like looking forward and we just, but I think like, and that's what, so many people have told me like, cause I worry, I always worried and of course, you always worry about your kids, even no matter how old they are. And, people always say, oh, but it, this is teaching them adversity and to overcome things. And, that it is. And I think, and that's what I think about my childhood. Absolutely. It's really taught me, to realize that like the obstacle, you couldn't overcome any obstacle. And, so, yeah.
Oh, it was so, when we're planning this, I'm just like, I had this piece and I kept telling you, I said, don't worry. It's not that I'm not prepared. I just know this is going to go where it needs to go. And, we went back and forth a little bit on our plan, but yeah, I thank you for being you. You've taught me so much. I love every time you're on, in our connect groups, or just, you've shared so many, just the way you speak and, like you said, you're here on purpose. God is just starting you've already inspired so many people. And as your story is shared and your journey continues, it's just, I'm grateful that you were able to share this with us. And of course, we'll share it as far and wide as we can, but keep sharing. I know you had some big goals to do other ambassadorships and share. And so that's why I encourage everybody, like take the nuggets. I love that one because this was a huge shift for me in the last year. And you said it like, we must have listened to the same podcast because it was, and then my life coach told me, all of a sudden I started hearing it everywhere. What if it's so easy to look at the what if on the bad side, everything. But what if on the other side is like infinite possibilities, and what if, like, so I love that you shared that. You are one strong, amazing woman who also had, moments of, it wasn't like you always were just pure armor and strength. Like, you broke down, you reached your breaking point. You had all the doubts and the fear and all of that. You just got through it. And that iron will of like, there's only one option, and that's forward. So I know that's going to help so many people. Oh, love you, girl. And yeah, I remember your teamwork sent you like sunglasses to Arizona.
Yes. Yeah.
So you had created, I guess we can end on this part, because you touched upon community. And yes, I feel like VFit's a big community in your life, but you've also created other communities with your health coaching, and you've shared with me that really helped. Like, it's good to have different communities and different people for different things. Like, you don't have one, so that if it's something with health, like, we can't always talk to our spouse about, they might be dealing with something in a different way. And so you have somebody else to talk to. Or like, what I love about VFit is we're not all going through something hard together, which is good too, to have a group like that. But it's good to have people that are having babies, and like, you have like the diversity of different life.
And that's, I mean, thanks to my therapist, she really encouraged me. Like, I did, early on, was like, identify like 2 or 3 people, but like, what are, and think about what are their natural strengths. I have one friend she's more the, tough skin, gonna tell it to you straight. Like, if I'm feeling particularly vulnerable or down that day, like, probably not gonna lean into her, like, but it's, then I have another friend that's, she's very spiritual. Has a gift with words and with, God's word. And so you learn to kind of tap into different people depending on what you need. And because there's nothing worse than tapping into the wrong thing. And then it's like, feeling after that phone call, you're like, why did I call them?
And that's hard to know. Like, I mean, just on a general level, like, I listened to a podcast about that the other week, just more about advice. Like, your parents love you and they want to give you good advice, but did they ever start a business, or did they, like, so having the right people to talk to about, the right things. So, well, thank you. This has been amazing. We're right at an hour. So, I mean, worth every second of it. If anyone has make sure you read the chat box, Sarah. I had a fear, like, I kept checking, this is recorded, right? Like, there's no way. And then I'm like, please, Cloud, send this recording, because I don't know. That's my only, like, this was so good. I love sharing these episodes once or twice a month, just depending on what prevails. I would love to sit down and just talk with different people. So Sarah, you were amazing. Thank you all that were here live.
Thank you for inviting me. It's such an honor, and I love sharing, and I am slowly someday going to publish a book. So that was kind of my joke when the new, when the cancer and transplant hit. I was like, I thought I was doing so well. And then it was like, oh, okay, God, you didn't want that book to be done yet.
Right. Well, just like you didn't get, I thought, when you're saying like the cancer could come within the next 5 years, like you had that period where you got to get your health under control to be able to have the surgery. But funny thing, and you never know, my business coach in my Todd Durkin mastermind group, Kelly Watson, is co-owner of Scripter Publishing, self-publishing company. I think a book's in my future out one day too, but I'm not ready. But there are resources. So if you do want to get connected, they're amazing. They've published books for Todd and help with the process a lot too. Just have her transcribe this podcast in a book. There you go.
Yeah. Exactly. What an honor. Thank you.
Oh, love you, girl. We'll see you in some dancing and connect and all the other wonderful stuff. And if anyone wants to reach out to Sarah, you probably can find her through VFit channels, or reach out to me and I'll connect you as well. And keep shining bright, my friend. You are definitely here on purpose.
Thank you so much.
Bye.